Welcome back, everyone, to our Equinox retreat. During this session, we're going to explore the idea of Samadhi and what Samadhi is. And we have a guest speaker today. Donelle Mason will be joining us from New Zealand. She is an ordained Kriya Yoga teacher. Last time we were in Ireland, she received her ordination. She joined us last May in California, and she's coming back to the U.S. again in June for our June solstice retreat at the Himalayan Institute. So if you're attending that, you'll get to meet her there as well. All right. So this is Donelle Mason, and I'm going to be turning it over to her. As she goes through her talk, if you have questions, please type them in the chat box. And then when she concludes her talk today, we'll field those questions to her. So she'll answer them at the end.
All right, lovely. Okay, good morning, everyone. Well, it's morning here. It's 7 o'clock in New Zealand. I think it's quite neat that in this Equinox retreat, we've all got the same amount of light around us at the moment. Quite often when I enter these retreats, I'm like in the middle of winter and you're in the middle of summer. So it kind of feels quite nice at Equinox that we've all got the right amount of light. So thanks very much, Ryan, for an introduction. My Kriya Yoga journey began back in 2017. So I'm probably about in my 9th year. And then I did the apprenticeship 2018, 2019, flew to CSA for a retreat in 2019, initiated, and then back to Ireland for a retreat. And then, as Ryan said, back to the States last year for a retreat. And here we are. I really appreciate these online retreats that we have. It was right back in 2017. This was how I found my way into Kriya Yoga. And it wasn't even a live one, it was a replay. And I spent the whole weekend, I was engrossed in it. I'm like, wow, this is really something. So to be able to be all over the world and find our way into this journey and to, I see some familiar places here. That's lovely. The world doesn't seem like such a big place. We could be all together. So thanks, Ryan, for making these available. Thanks to the other presenters. I've got Brian and Jasmine and Ryan. Because, this is our service. This is our volunteered time to, prepare and present service to the guru, service to the teacher. And we acknowledge all the teachers in the lineage. So I'm here today to talk about Samadhi. And the first half of this talk is probably a little bit more generic. I don't know how many people here are new to yoga on these online retreats. We're not too sure. So I'll set up the scene in the first part, explaining more about what yoga is. And then in the second part of the talk, we'll get a bit more into the finer details of Samadhi. So I haven't got any slides. I've got a few notes in front of me. There's nothing too much to see. So yeah, just sit back or whatever you need to do to enjoy the talk. I have got a few little reflections for you to do. So if you've got a pen or a notebook handy, then I'm going to ask you to do a few little reflections. And so the very first one that we're going to get into before we start is just sort of think about what your current understanding of Samadhi is. Okay? What do you think it is? I'll give you a moment to think about that and maybe write it in your notebook. These reflection journals can be just such a great learning tool. We get to find a starting point and then we can track our progress, see where we've moved to. And later on, it's quite interesting reading to go back. So what is your current understanding of Samadhi? We'll have a little bit of a look at the Sanskrit word Samadhi. So the root of the words, we've got sam, which means S-A-M, sam, excuse my accent, meaning together or completely. And then it kind of means towards. And then D, we've got meaning put. So the word Samadhi, to put toward completely. And I had a definition of Samadhi of being a state of intense concentration or absorption that is realized through meditation. So we'll see how close I am to that towards the end. So in Patanjali's 8-limbed yoga path, what Samadhi is the final stage, it's the final limb. And it's said to be where yoga, where union, this yoking with your true essence takes place. Obviously, when using words, they can be helpful, they can be harmful. If the word true essence doesn't really resonate with you, then just, what does? Is it source, divine, God? Just whatever word that has that meaning for you behind it. It's not what word you use, but, it's how you describe that feeling. Yeah. So in the Yoga Sutras, the view is that self-realization, that enlightenment, moksha, liberation, is through Samadhi. So self-realization is realized through Samadhi. And it's repeated Samadhi experiences which lead to self-realization. So my next little reflective question that I want you to answer is, why do you want Samadhi? Let's just take a moment to think about this. There's never any right or wrong answers. It's a reflection. What is it for you? What is it about your life that has led you to seek Samadhi? You might not know yet, and that's okay. Okay, and some common themes that I often hear that, there's a lot of people in the world on this self-improvement quest, and this might be the ultimate attainment of that. The very enticing promise of yoga, which was just put up in the chat there, is to end all suffering. A more mystical answer might be to end the cycle of birth and death, samsara. Perhaps you've thought that by reaching Samadhi, you'll reach God, or know that eternal aspect of your being. So Samadhi is a precondition for comprehending, understanding, and experiencing all these claims. And we're all aware that yoga takes practice, okay? In Sanskrit, the word for practice is abhyasa, it's repeated practice. And there can be no perfection in yoga without practice. We practice so that our mental activity and our fluctuations can be stopped at will. And we probably all know that Sutra 1.2 at the start of the sutras, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the cessation, the ending, the stopping of the fluctuations and modifications in our field of consciousness. So our yoga, when it's practiced effectively, enables us to do this, to end the fluctuations at will, okay? So not randomly, not by chance, not occasionally, but at will through a repeated method. Yeah. We repeat the method until we're confident at it, and this takes time, People ask how much time, well, it takes as long as it takes. And the nearness of it largely depends, as it's said in the sutras, on your degree of intensity that you're willing to put towards it. Krishna does tell us that no practice is wasted, so that's good. So our next little reflection for you is, what is your current level of intensity, to put towards your practice? In the sutras, we're given the categories of mild, moderate, and intense. So just have a think about what your intensity of practice is at the moment. Okay, no right or wrong answers. Just be honest. Where are you currently at? What's your level of intensity? So Samadhi is the mind fixed to one thing, okay, at the exclusion of all else. It's known as ekagrata. And that might sound hard, but it's through repeated practice with the intensity that you're willing to put towards it that you'll become successful at fixing the mind to one thing. Okay? And it gets easier, and eventually you're able to do it at will. So Samadhi being the 8th limb of the 8-limbed path. The other limbs, they're in Sutra 229, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhayo, stavangani. These are the 8 limbs of yoga. Okay. I'm not going to go over them in too much detail today, but I just want to touch upon them briefly in case there is someone new here. Yamas and niyamas, the first 2 limbs, and it's often interpreted that when we come to the path of yoga that the yamas and niyamas are already pretty well established. That very first sutra, Hatha Yoga Anushasanam, now is the practice, now is the discourse in yoga. So now one's ready, one's prepared, one's committed to take instruction in yoga. And we all start here, okay? They're the foundational first steps on our self-realization and our Samadhi journey. The yamas, universal codes of conduct. So we've got ahimsa, non-harming, satya, truthfulness, asteya, non-stealing, brahmacharya, the right use of energy, self-restraint. Brahmacharya is also this controlling the senses and directing your energy towards spiritual growth rather than wasting it on your external desires. And then a parigraha, which is your non-grasping, non-coveting. And then the niyamas, they're more personal codes of conduct. Okay, so the yamas are universal and the niyamas are a bit more personal. their observances. So we've got shocha, which is your cleanliness, purity, both physical and mental. Santosha, contentment. Tapas is your discipline, your austerity, your burning enthusiasm. Self-study, study of the sacred scriptures, repetition of mantra. And then Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender or devotion to that higher, to your higher power, to Ishvara. I really like as Houston's wording on that one. He says, transferring one's identity. Okay, so you're transferring your identity to that seer within, surrendering all your thoughts and merging yourself into ultimate reality. That's a really nice way of explaining Ishvara Pranidhana. So these foundations, yamas and niyamas, they're really about becoming a mature, kind, compassionate, healthy human, being mentally and emotionally mature, being as physically healthy as you can be without being fanatical. So that might be prioritizing your sleep and your nutrition and getting the right amount of exercise for our vehicle of consciousness, managing your resources and your relationships, getting your affairs in order, engaging in meaningful work. And all of this is preparation for yoga. We're creating the right set of circumstances so that samadhi can be realized. And samadhi is often seen as the fruit of the practice, the phala. So if you master all the limbs beforehand, then samadhi can be the result. So think of the yamas and niyamas just like the foundations of a house. And I know when I was in primary school in New Zealand, I think it was Friday mornings, and the teachers would go and have their meetings and we'd have Bible class. And I remember this song about, the wise man builds his house upon the rocks and the foolish man builds his house upon the sands. Yeah. And then the rains came down and the floods came up. The house on the rock stood firm, but the house on the sand went. So we're really thinking about these foundations, the yamas and niyamas. We start with them, we continue with them. They're there always with great vow. Okay. So working on the yamas and niyamas, it can be quite a bit of work, but it's continuous work. It's also really revealing and rewarding. And they're it's the basis of the yoga philosophy. You can't have samadhi without being established in the yamas and niyamas. Okay. So probably know that Ryan's a huge advocate about seeking professional help when you need it. So if there's blocks that you just can't get past on your own, that might look like counsellors, addressing past trauma, working with other health professionals, fitness professionals. It's all Kriya Yoga, okay? And Kriya Yoga means that they're your actions for the purpose of yoga. So we want to address and gain mastery over that which blocks us. And the more formal meditation practices of yoga, they absolutely can still go alongside the yamas and niyamas. You don't have to wait to get your life in order to start meditating, but your meditation will be profoundly better when you do. So samadhi is the culmination of all the limbs of yoga. We've briefly touched on the yamas and niyamas, and then you've got your asana, which is your meditation seat. We want that to be stable, comfortable, easeful. Sukham asanam, so it's stable and easeful. And then pranayama, limb 4, that's our breath expansion and control. Limb 5 is the withdrawal of the senses from your external objects, stimuli. And these first 5 are all setting us up so we can move into the final 3 limbs of yoga, which are dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And collectively, these final 3 are known as sanyama. They are concentration, meditation, and samadhi. I think it's important that wherever we all are on our yoga journey, we can affirm right now that samadhi is not beyond your reach. It's not beyond your grasp. It's a repeatable experience. That's what makes yoga a science. It's repeatable. And self-realization is simply knowing who and what you really are. And we can all know our true essence. It's our birthright. It's already true. It's not out there somewhere. Yoga teaches us how to realize it, how to uncover it, how to unveil it, how to remember it, how to remove the obstacles that are in our way to knowing it. You do have to really want it. That comes back to your level of intensity that you're willing to put into it. You have to be committed and disciplined and willing to work at it. You have to be willing to make it a priority in your life. There are going to be some sacrifices to be made. You can't have it all. You can't have a life that's driven by, chasing fulfillment in the external world through desires and circumstances, and the yoga. You might have to choose maybe not to be so social if that's what's drawing you away from your practice. You might have to choose to, if you haven't got a stable living environment or your resources been met, then maybe you've got to take a job that you'd rather not because that's in the way of your practice. It's getting your resources sorted. Pretty hard to sit down into your yoga and your meditation when the basics aren't under control because your mind's just going to be all over the place. So this is what the yamas and niyamas are teaching us. It might be relationships that are not supportive. It might be too many demands on your time. I think you'll likely know what these sacrifices are. The yamas and niyamas are pretty good at putting them out. So maybe we'll do this as the fourth reflection in your notebook. Just take another minute now to reflect on one thing that's getting in the way of your yoga practice. Yeah. So firstly, what is it? What is it that's getting in the way? And then secondly, how might you address it? And it could be a health goal. It could be lack of sleep that's getting in the way. So then you need to set up a better sleep routine, get up earlier or get some morning light. So what's getting in the way and how might you address it? What action will you take? Because that's Kriya Yoga, action for the purpose of yoga. We can ask ourselves, are our life choices taking you further towards or further away from yoga goal? So in yoga scripture, there are many terms and concepts to try and understand. The vast majority of yogic spiritual knowledge comes from the Vedas. The Vedas are the oldest sacred scriptures in Indian philosophy, and I think they're dated back to about 500 BC. But they're more of an oral tradition, and then they were written down. But that's what we've got about them. The word Veda comes from the Sanskrit word vid, and vid means knowledge or to know. So we had the Vedas, that's where it all came from, and then came the Upanishads. There's said to be about 108 of these that we know of, but likely a whole lot more. And then later we've got Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, among other texts. So what we're talking about is these yogic scriptures give us the yogic truths. All yogic truths should have their foundation in the scriptures. Okay, it's not my knowledge, it's not something I made up. It's grounded in the scriptures. And that's important. It's not new. And it also can't be said enough that yoga has to be experienced in practice. Yet there's no amount of reading, listening to discourses or anything that's going to uncover what you want to know. We know that Yogananda told Mr. Davis to read a little, meditate more, and think of God all the time. Okay. So the main scriptures that we use in this lineage are the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutras. So they relate back to our Svadhyaya, one of the niyamas, to their study of sacred scripture. There's no doubt that some of the concepts within yoga philosophy can seem mystical and confusing and even at times contradictory. And this is more likely to occur if you're reading and studying too widely. And you probably all heard the study from our lineage where Yogananda had advised Mr. Davis to only read his books in the first year. And that wasn't to be controlling, but just to get a sharper focus. Otherwise, you're at risk of, continuously being a spiritual shopper, skimming the surface of traditions, but not really going so deep. If you can relate to this term, spiritual shopper, maybe it's time to ask yourself, well, why? Why are you shopping around? Are you looking for something easier? Is it a commitment issue? Are you avoiding the deeper, more challenging work? Do you think you know better? Okay. Are you not ready? It's something to reflect on again. Yoga practice is not always comfortable and fluffy, and the teacher's not there to validate your ego. Some might be, but they probably just want your money or your admiration or both. Yeah. So a teacher's a really necessary component for success. Maybe you're not quite ready for the teacher. Being part of an established tradition with a teacher is essential because there are just too many obstacles to overcome with self-effort alone. What is a teacher? A teacher is someone who's experienced the results of the practice that you want to experience. That's number one. Okay, they've experienced it. Number two, they can guide you. Number three, they themselves had a teacher. And number four, that they'll be dedicated and disciplined and embody yoga quite authentically. Now, each teacher, like each student, will have a personality, they'll have quirks, they'll have idiosyncrasies that come with the package. Those personality traits are there before yoga, samadhi, and they're still there after yoga. You've got to be okay with the idea that you might not agree with everything they say, everything they do. That's okay. Obviously, any inappropriate behaviour is not acceptable, but personality traits we can look beyond. You may think you know better. That's really common in Western cultures. We seem to have an aversion to authority or being told what to do. So a few questions to get clear on. Does the teacher embody what I'm seeking? Have they experienced what they're talking about? Do they have capacity to teach? And can they guide you to have your own experience? A teacher is there to teach you Kriya Yoga, to guide you in that way, not to be a savior, a counselor, a father figure, not to solve your life dramas, not to stroke your ego. Okay, it's the purpose of Kriya Yoga. Ryan is my teacher. He's my guru in Kriya Yoga. He initiated me, he ordained me, he taught me the process, he kept me engaged in the path with all the material that's available. He said a few encouraging words, only a few because he's a man of brief words, a few encouraging words along the way. And he's provided opportunities like this for me to share and to teach. And he's recommended supplementary material, which has been really valuable as well. And most of this has occurred from the other side of the world. How amazing. Now, I've had other yoga teachers in my life, which I have learned a great deal from. I was already a Hatha yoga teacher before I found Kriya Yoga. I've had amazing teachers and mentors at uni. My children are my teachers. I consider Patanjali a teacher. And there are others, and that's okay. But if it's Kriya Yoga that you want to know, you want to find a primary Kriya Yoga teacher who'll assist you with eventually finding the teacher within, the guru within. So there are 4 paths that we're told about in the Bhagavad Gita that lead to self and God realization. They are the yoga of meditation, Raja Yoga, the yoga of action, Karma Yoga, the yoga of devotion, Bhakti Yoga, and the yoga of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. So this Raja Yoga, the yoga of meditation, where one practices disciplined meditation to achieve Samadhi. And that's what we'll mainly be getting into in a minute. Yoga, the yoga of action, where one performs all their duties with selfless action and detachment from the results of their actions. So they realize the self, the capital S self, their true essence, through serving and recognizing that very self in others. Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion, surrender, and love for the divine, focusing on the heart, practicing love, compassion, service to the divine, service to the guru, rather than through intellectual study. And Jnana Yoga, yoga of knowledge and the intellect. And with Jnana Yoga, the core principles are discernment, detachment, and self-inquiry. So in Jnana Yoga, you're almost using the mind to transcend the mind. And each of the 4 parts, they offer an approach to achieving spiritual growth and enlightenment. And each path caters to different personalities and temperaments. So they're also not separate. There's an overlapping and interlinking between the 4, and they strengthen each other. You can be a devoted, service-orientated, intellectual meditator. Kriya Yoga encompasses all of these. So what is Kriya Yoga then? Right, the Sanskrit word Kriya comes from the root Kri, which means to make, to do, create. So Kriya is translated action, deed, effort, working. And the Ya is often associated with the divine force that's enabling the action. So we get this action for the purpose of yoga, action for the purpose of a spiritual outcome. That's Kriya Yoga. So in the actual lineage, there's some particular breathing, meditation techniques that you receive when you come into the lineage. And taking the initiation means that you've found a path. you've stopped shopping around. All of these techniques are available in books. They're available on the web. Ryan's got videos of them. Techniques are great. They work. But all the other basic techniques work as well. There's no need to get caught up in anything too complicated. I know in the first few years of my practice, I think I needed that. I needed those more complicated techniques to slow my mind down. But as time has gone on, then I've found that it's actually the more basic techniques that I'm drawn to. So 95% of my practice is just these super basic techniques. The main purpose of the techniques is to take us to the settled, calm, clear, yet alert, silent space where everything else is eventually going to be revealed. So the sutras are offering this detailed, concise, codified paths. There's 196 sutras. There's a whole lot of unpacking, understanding, contemplation and practice that's needed. And this is just another reason why a teacher is so important. The sutras are broken down into 4 books, 4 padas. And the first one, Samadhi pada, yoga's explained. It's given the definition. It's on Samadhi. It's on concentration. And then in book 2, that's on practice. Teaches the various methods and it starts with Kriya Yoga. So Kriya Yoga is the start of the pada 2, and then that chapter runs through to pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. So it's these first 5 limbs that are setting us up to move into the next part. We've got book 3, which is, it's got the cities, the accomplishments, the ways to get there. And then book 4 is the step beyond. Okay, so once the Samadhi is reached, that one's on Kaivalya, the aloneness of seeing. So this again, you're already pure awareness here and now. You're already perfect, whole, complete. Nothing needs to be gained. Yoga's just removing these obstacles to the realization of that truth. Okay, the realization that there's an eternal, all-knowing, ever-present source that cannot be divided, cannot disappear. And the yoga path is to find it, to uncover it, to remember it in this lifetime. And you are that. Thou art that. Tat tvamasi, thou art that. Before we get to there, we've got to bring the mind under control. Okay, so stepping right back. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. This nirodha is making a break, if you like, a break in the fluctuations and the movements, the waves in our field of consciousness. And this break that we make, it starts to create impressions. And these impressions, they start to stick. And then we're able to lengthen the break. And then we can stay absorbed in Samadhi, focused and one-pointed for lengthening periods of time, without getting hijacked by the vrittis, by the movements. So the stages of Samadhi, we're going to get a little bit more into the details of Samadhi now. They're described in the sutras. They're stages you can know, you can practice, and you can perfect. They're useful as a teaching tool to recognize what stage you're at, and then you can more accurately identify where you are at and where the work needs to be done. And each stage allows our meditative experience to become quieter, subtler, and then some of those more habitual ways of the bouncing mind, all of that stuff starts to just diminish and drop away. All right. So part 2, we're going to look into the stages of Samadhi. And first up, we've got Sampragyata Samadhi. So it's absorption with an object of your awareness. And it is Samadhi, which means it's transformative. There's no need to get caught up if it's a higher Samadhi, a lower Samadhi. We just want to get to Samadhi. Okay. How? Repeated, effective meditation. So the stages of Sampragyata Samadhi, they move from your gross objects to subtle objects. The Sanskrit root of Sampragyata, the first part, sa, means with, and then pragya, with cognition, with knowing. So it's Samadhi with cognition, with mental processes, with understanding through thought and experience. Stage 1 is called Savitarika Samadhi. So absorption with gross thought and reasoning. Your chitta, your mind field, your field of consciousness, that which you're aware of, is absorbed in a gross object to the exclusion of all else. So what that ekagrata, it's one-pointed. For example, your gross object might be the breath. Your gross object might be mantra. It might be a candle flame. It might be a yantra, like a geometrical diagram. Maybe it's a form of a divinity, Krishna, Ganesha, Shiva, Jesus. So it could be a gross element, earth, water, fire. You've got complete absorption with the object, assisted by concepts, words, names, meanings, memory, reasoning. All of that helps you remain focused on your gross object. So if you were using the breath, then it might be all the gross sensations. You might feel your chest moving. You might feel your belly moving. You might feel the ear, moving at the nostrils. If you were using an element, then you're describing it. If you're using a form again, you're describing it, you're remembering it, you're naming it through these words. So that was stage 1, Savitarka. Stage 2, we move into Nirvitarka Samadhi. And that's got the same gross object, but now it hasn't got any overlay of concepts and words. There's no language, no interpretation, just direct perception only. The words have gone quiet. The object that you were meditating on, it just shines like it is. It's established. It carries on with its own momentum. So if chanting the mantra was your object, then when you stop chanting, it just carries on by itself. If you were focusing on the breath as your gross object, then you've still got full absorption with the breath, but without the words now to keep it there. It's just staying there on its own. Okay. Still pristinely focused on the object. And then we move into stage 3. Okay. Savichara Samadhi. So it's our meditation, our absorption with the same subtle object, back to using some reflection and reasoning again. Okay. So we're back to using deliberate thought and investigation. But the object is more subtler. So examples of subtler objects are energy, life force, prana, chakras. The senses are in here, the tanmantras are in here. So sight, sound, touch. In this stage, your thought it's much quieter and your words may be less. Your reflection's a bit more intuitive rather than analysing and controlling. The object might feel a bit more spacious and refined. The mind's still calm, perception's subtle, ego's faint, and you're following it, you're absorbed in it, but with a bit less control. So if our breath is moved to the subtle object of the breath, then it's the life force, the prana, the energy. If it was mantra, then maybe it's turned more into a sound vibration, feelings, sensations, maybe tingling electrical currents. If it was a form, then maybe you're looking at what's the meaning behind the form, the meaning behind the mantra. So you're in this stage, you're looking deeper for something subtle. Okay, it's got more of a lightness to it. You're still very present. You know, I am meditating on a subtle object. Okay, stage 3. And then we move into stage 4, which is called Nirvichara Samadhi. Okay. So here, the subtle object remains, but the reflection ceases. So here, all the subtle words and the reflection and the reasoning and the memory and the thoughts that you use to keep you in the subtle object of stage 3, like they've all gone quiet now. And you're in profound stillness, clarity. It's like these second stages to these ones are a bit like, they're like an echo, okay? They're also likened to a dream state. Very clear, awake and present. And I know Vyas calls this the razor's edge of awareness. So you're right at the point of awareness. You're following it. The point's continuous, and you're just being carried with it, this subtle object. So these first 4, they require lots of practice. Naming each stage is really important. Each stage on its own is a samadhi, the transformative samadhi. You don't need to worry again about if it's lower or higher. It's all samadhi, so it means it's transformative. You can enjoy it, you can recognize it, you practice it, you create impressions, and you establish it so it's repeatable so that you can do it at will. All right, so I think we're up to explaining Sananda Samadhi. So Sananda, Sanskrit word sa, again meaning with, and then Ananda, bliss, rapture. It could be a peaceful feeling filling the mind. It could show up as joy, rapture. It could also show up as an absence of suffering. If we think about it, if the way that you view the world mostly is through the lens of like pain and suffering, then absence of pain and suffering is going to feel quite blissful. So the subtle object of meditation in the previous stage, okay, so that's faded. And now we're just here with this feeling of bliss, feeling of Ananda, that's now dominant, okay? The feeling hasn't come from the senses. There's no external event that's caused it. It's come about from deep inner stillness and silence. And it's like a natural progression. When you've got to stage 4, really subtle, then it almost sort of just rolls over. It just rolls over. That echo just turns into this sort of Ananda. So it's quiet here. Ananda is happening. Okay. And you know it, you name it. You're like, I am experiencing Sananda Samadhi. I'm in it. I'm just going to divert a little bit because there's a bit of a trap here, and it's really common to get stuck and to misapprehend the stage and to mistake it for full realization. And you may recall a story that I've heard many times, Mr. Davis talking with Yogananda. And I just love these stories of our lineage, their ways of honouring our predecessors and our teachers, all those that have enabled us to be here now. So these stories, no matter how many times we hear them, I really love these stories and they really stick. So, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but the story goes that, Mr. Davis was casually walking with Paramahansa Yogananda, and he didn't normally have many questions, but on this day a question came to him, and he asked Yogananda, how many of the saints and sages in autobiography of a yogi are fully realized? And Yogananda, without hesitating, he said, oh no, not many. Most are happy to remain in the bliss of God communion. But you, and he was talking to Mr. Davis, you are to go all the way in this lifetime, and you can. So the trap here at this stage, the trap of bliss, is getting stuck here and mistaking it for full self-realization. So Yogananda called this the bliss of God communion. So that can be a bit of a trap. And the other trap to be aware of is the trap of blankness, of nothingness. So many meditators mistake a quiet blankness, it's called, for samadhi. But in blankness, what's being experienced is a temporary stoppage of fluctuations. And I mean, that's good. But what it doesn't equal is stable absorption. So the trap is mistaking dullness and blankness for freedom. And why is it such a trap? Because blankness is quite peaceful, it's effortless. And depending on your life's circumstances, this blankness might feel pretty good. But blankness is more sleep-like, okay? It's dullness, it's tamasic, it's sleepy, yeah? And what happens in this dullness is, you might have a good rest, but the meditator's not involved in inquiry and vichara. There's no discrimination, viveka. And so you can end up in spiritual stagnation. The blankness is rest for the mind asleep, and we don't want to make blankness the goal. It's like we don't want to make bliss the goal, well, initially, but, don't want to get stuck there. But samadhi's the revelation of truth. Okay, it's what's always been there, so it's stillness plus full absorption. So if you do fall into this trap, and I know I have many times, when this appears, you want to recognize it early. So your signs are heaviness, loss of clarity, sleepiness, a nothingness feeling. What you can do, you can brighten the mind a bit, maybe lengthen up through the spine, sit up like you mean business. You can raise your eyebrows. You could take a deeper breath or two. You might even open your eyes for a couple of seconds. Recall the sense of being in your body. If you find that you are too sleepy, then, take a nap or meditate at a more wakeful time. Another thing you could do is bring one of the previous supports back in. Your breath, your mantra, you could return to a previous stage. refocus on the object. We want the object to be stable, continuous. The effort should feel light, steady, and wakeful, but not strained. All right. So I hope I haven't lost you. As I said earlier, it's quite a hard topic to explain, and it really does have to be experienced, So read a little, listen a little, but meditate more. So our last stage of Samprajñata Samadhi is called Asmita Samadhi. Asmita is I-am-ness. It's a sense of individual identity. Complete absorption with I-am-ness. Okay? Awareness that there's an I. So in Sananda Samadhi beforehand, we had the knowing that I am experiencing bliss. I am experiencing Ananda. Okay? So now bliss is not the object, but the I who is experiencing the bliss. Okay? So bliss is faded, and now it's just the individual, the sense of individual being remains. Okay? So previously we had the bliss that was an experience, it was a knowable. We're free of that. And what remains is just pure I-am-ness. Okay, that's what we're absorbed in. Okay. We realize that this I sense, the sense of I, sense of individual identity, that's also a knowable. It can be known. It can be experienced. We can name it. It's Asmita Samadhi. In Samkhya philosophy, this I sense, it's ahamkara, the I sense, it's a principle in creation. Okay, the mind, the manas, that's a principle in creation. The organs of action, feet, our eyes, the reproductive organs, they're principles in creation. The senses, the subtle elements, sight, sound, they're all principles in creation. The gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, they're principles in creation. Okay. This sense of I, this individual identity, is also a principle. Okay, so by staying with it, by controlling it, by meditating on it, then you remain at the Asmita Samadhi stage. And you might see how this is happening here. We've got these stages of principles of creation, right down to earth, right down to the objects, gross objects. And through these stages of samadhi, we're slowly working back. We've gone from gross, we've gone back to, senses more subtle. We've gone back to, the bliss feeling, back to the I sense, but they're all principles in creation. So when we get here, when we get to the samadhi, it's just the subtlest form of ego before it dissolves. Okay. Ego can be a word we can get a bit confused with. If we view it from a Western point of view, then it's often interpreted as like a type of arrogance or pride. If you say someone's got a big ego, they've got a big head, they're full of themselves. Feeling superior can be, what we translate ego to. It could also be feeling inferior. Okay, it's still an identification. The Sanskrit word for ego is ahamkara. Aham being I, kara, the doer, the maker. So we've got the I maker, the I doer. And ego is just the sense of self-identity, the sense of individuality. It's distinguishing me and mine as separate from everything else. It's my house, my family, my job, my qualifications, my appearance. Me is the doer. So this I, this sense here, this was the object of our meditation in Asmita Samadhi. So these are the 6 stages of Samprajñata Samadhi, and they've all got an object of awareness that's been meditated on, that we're completely absorbed in. So it started off with the groans, with words, without words. It moved on to subtle objects, with words, without words. We were aware of bliss, of Ananda as an object. We were aware of the I sense as an object, to the exclusion of all else. So we still had this ekagrata, this one-pointedness, and all of your other disturbed, fluctuating states of the mind, they're gone. So this is probably where most of our practice is perfecting these stages. Okay. And the inquiry here is, well, what is it? What is it that's aware of the I sense? Okay. What is it? So in this previous stage, in this Asmita where the I sense was, we might have been getting little glimpses that actually, there must be something that's perceiving the I, because the I can be known. It's a principle. How about that? Something knows there's an I sense. So if we're to move on, we're faced with dissolving the I. There can be a lot of resistance here, Why? Most people don't want to dissolve it. Our ego itself doesn't really want to be dissolved or removed. We're so used to identifying with it. We think that if our self-identity, if our individualness, that's what makes us us. We think that if it's removed, then, gosh, what's left? It's a habit, it's a groove, it's a sanskara. It's constantly getting backed up by society because it's a normal way of interacting with the world. Our ego thinks that if it disappears, then you also disappear. Okay? And this might feel like foundation of your mortal existence is at stake. So there's resistance. We can remember Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. He ended the first chapter, the despondency of Arjuna. He's throwing down his weapons, his bows and his arrows. He's in dismay, overcome. I cannot fight. Because on the other side of the battlefield are my cousins, my relatives, my teachers, my tendencies. So this despondency, he's overcome. It's too hard. How can I destroy that which makes me me? And then through the rest of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna goes on to counsel Arjuna. So what this is all about. So we're faced with dissolving, or you might prefer the word transcending the I sense rather than dissolving it. You can transcend it, transcending the sense of self-identity. Asmita is one of the kleshas. Okay, what's the klesha? It's an obstacle, an affliction. It's also called a veil or a poison. There's 5 of them, and they're obstacles to our self-realization, to enlightenment. They cloud the mind, they perpetuate negative patterns. The very first one is avidya, which means incorrect knowledge, wrong knowledge. And then the next one is this asmita. Okay, so the sense of I. How do we overcome them? I won't go into all of them, there's 5 of them. We overcome them by knowledge acquired through effective meditation that leads to transformative samadhi. Okay, so this final stage, we've done the 6 stages of samprajñata samadhi. This final stage where we've transcended the I is called asamprajñata samadhi. So we've got the a in front of the samprajñata, without negation, without the mental processes, cognition and awareness. So it's samadhi without any cognition of an object, no object. This is the culmination of Patanjali's yogic path, where even that subtle I, asmita, has been transcended. It's different from the earlier stages of samadhi because nothing here remains to be known, experienced, or observed. In the previous stage, the I sense was known. Okay? So here there's no sense of I am meditating. Okay? Now it's only pure consciousness, being remains. No knower, no known, awareness resting in itself alone. Awareness, not blankness, awareness. And it's not an experience. Okay? Why isn't it an experience? Because experiences come and go. This has always been, always has been, always will be. That's what makes it timeless and eternal. There's never a time when it is not. It's not a stage because it always is. It's the remembrance of what has always been. It's the truth of your being, the pure essence of your being. So it can't really be talked about like the other samadhis. Asamprajñata, it's a peace beyond a pleasurable experience. It's beyond bliss because bliss belongs to the light, clear mind, okay, and a sattvic mind. And the mind is a principle in creation. Okay, it's a knowable. It's beyond the I sense because the I sense was also a knowable in experience. Experiences come and go. They change, they're transient, but pure awareness doesn't come and go. So it's not, I experience the truth, but the truth alone remains. Mm. All right. So the final part of my talk today, I'm just going to talk a little bit like, how do you know? How do you know if you've reached Samadhi? Yeah. So let's look at Samprajñata Samadhi first. After a Samprajñata Samadhi experience, when your meditation is over, the mind returns. It's probably a lot quieter, more refined. You might find your desires are greatly reduced. You might feel a bit of contentment. Maybe there's this subtle attachment to the peace and the bliss that you found in your meditation. There's an understanding of something that was experienced in meditation. Okay? Time may have been suspended. I know that when I come out of my meditation and you open your eyes and things are a bit clearer, a bit more surreal, and it's like, oh gosh, I wonder where that time went. Ego might be very thin, but it's not completely gone. And there may be this feeling of, I had a great meditation. I'm absorbed in clarity. So you've got a clear, light mind. And it's important to remember that, that Samprajñata Samadhi, it can be entered through practice. It's repeatable. And it's maintained by effort and discipline. However, in Asamprajñata Samadhi, there's been a fundamental shift in identity. There's no return to ignorance, that avidya, klesha, incorrect knowledge, that's gone. Therefore, your non-attachment is effortless. There's spontaneous compassion. Life continues, but bondage does not. And it's not a state of consciousness, but consciousness itself. It's a truth which is unchangeable. Asamprajñata Samadhi, it cannot be done. Rather, it happens when the effort dissolves, transcends. The other samadhis can be entered and exited with practice, but Asamprajñata Samadhi happens. The realization's there that you're not the mind, because the mind's unknowable, it comes, it goes. Not the body's unknowable. I'm not that which I identify with, because that too changes. I am that which always is, which always has been. I am that in which everything else arises and falls. I'm the witness, the observer of all the knowables. I am that which remains, the omniscience here within. So therefore, Asamprajñata Samadhi is the end of ignorance, the end of wrong identification. So there's abidance at the witness, as the witness, and this is self-realization. I just wrote down in here, chapter 4, verse 18 in the Yoga Sutras, the fluctuations of the mind are always known due to the changelessness of their master Purusha. The fluctuations of the mind are always known due to the changelessness of their master. All right, so we had Samprajñata Samadhi, absorption in something, an object, and Asamprajñata Samadhi, absorption into being itself. It's important we don't chase Asamprajñata Samadhi. Yet we want to work at refining all the previous stages, starting with the yamas and niyamas, cultivating discrimination, practice, non-attachment, getting past the tracks of bliss and blankness. And when nothing's clung to, what remains is not a state or a stage, because it always is. And then eventually, so we were told, one will remain permanently linked in that perfect yogic union. All right, so I mean, we need to hear these teachings over and over again. Each time we hear a lecture or wisdom talk, we come to it with fresh ears. We hear it. It's called shravana, hearing and listening. We've got manana, which is reflecting, rationalizing what's been heard, and then nididhyasana, which is assimilating it, living and breathing the knowledge, direct experience. So we write notes, we reflect, we practice, and we repeat. We do it with sincerity, with devotion, with perseverance, with the intensity that you've got, that you write down, with the intensity that you've got to devote to your practice. Ramana Maharshi quote, all that is necessary is the stern belief that you are the self. All that's necessary is the stern belief that you are the self. So wrapping up a little bit here, what we've been through today, we've talked about the 8 limbs, starting with the yamas and niyamas, the 8 limbs of yoga. We talked about the importance of a teacher. We talked about how it's valid knowledge because it comes from the scriptures. Briefly looked at the 4 paths, meditation, action, devotion, knowledge, what Kriya Yoga is. We looked at the stages of Samadhi, possible traps, maybe how to overcome them, maybe how to know or recognize if you've had a Samadhi experience. I've tried to explain a Samadhi Samadhi. We've also made a few reflections, and I'd like to invite you now to look back at that first reflection that you did, which was, what is your current understanding of Samadhi? Let's look back at what you wrote. What's your current understanding? And then just reflect. What's your current understanding now? Has there been any moves? There may not have, but is there something you'd like to add to that? Okay, so I'm going to finish today. I'm going to read a little collection of phrases that I've heard and gathered. So this is stuff that's just resonated with me, because we know it can't be talked about, but these words are like pointers and indicators, and it's stuff that's resonated, that truth within me. So these are not all my words. I've adapted them. They're a collection of stuff that I wrote in my own journal. And when I looked at them and read through them, I'm like, wow, looks like a nice poem. And I'm not a poet, but I put them all together. So I thought, I'll read them out. Okay. So this is called What Happens After Self-Realization. Life continues when ignorance ends. There is still a mind, a body functioning, and a personality. Rather than I experience life, we know that life happens in awareness. There's no inner narrator. No self-referencing, no need to defend identity. There is natural humility. Thoughts arise and dissolve easily. Emotions move without residue. There's no suppression, no indulgence. Suffering does not accumulate. The future loses its psychological weight. The past has no emotional charge. Actions occur in the present, naturally. Actions are appropriate and efficient. There's no inner conflict, no doership felt. Work continues, often more effectively. Compassion happens, it is not chosen. Moral behaviours become spontaneous. There's no calculation of right or wrong. We love without dependency, experience closeness without fear of loss. There is listening without agenda. Nothing is rejected, yet nothing sticks. Praise is heard, but not absorbed. Blame is felt, but not owned. Pleasure is enjoyed, yet not clung to. Pain is experienced, but not personalized. Loss is acknowledged, yet not resisted. Personality traits may remain. Preferences may continue. Past conditions still appear. Bodies still age, fall ill, and die. None of this defines me. Peace is not dependent on silence. Others may notice a calm presence, unreactive listening, a lack of urgency, gentle humour, or natural authority without assertion. Internally, there is no sense of being awakened. Life becomes ordinary, yet utterly free.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Kriya Yoga Podcast. To learn more about Kriya Yoga meditation, you can visit us at kriyayogaonline.com, where you can find information about current book releases, online classes, and in-person retreats throughout the year. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, visit us at the Kriya Yoga Online Patreon community at patreon.com/Kriya Yoga.